IDF is saying that Hamas's rule in Gaza is faltering. There's these new videos that show scores of Hamas terrorists surrendering. They're stripped down to their underwear to ensure they're not hiding bomb vests as they hand over their weapons. Military officials say that Hamas terrorists have been surrendering in greater numbers to the IDF in other areas in Gaza as the military pushes deeper into Hamas's strongholds. Mass surrenders in the Jabaliyah and the Shaja'iyah stronghold neighborhoods. Interrogations after surrender reveal a growing disconnect between Hamas's soldiers and their leadership. Leadership is painting them a rosy picture and urging them to fight to the bitter end, while their trigger pullers on the ground say that leadership clearly does not care about their lives. The IDF says the information gathered from surrendering terror operatives has helped update the military's target bank. Military intelligence also reporting that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar fled the north of Gaza using humanitarian corridors in the early stages of the war. He is believed to be currently in the underground fortress network beneath Khan Yunis. The IDF is moving deeper into Khan Yunis every day now for the past week or so and announced 250 terror targets destroyed by the Air Force in the last day. And we are joined now by Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner of the IDF spokesperson's unit. I want to start with these pictures we've seen of these mass surrenders of terror operatives. How many people have we seen surrender so far? How common is this? These guys claim they're going to fight to the bitter end. Seems that they won't when push comes to shove.
So as we move forward in our operations, we are going to see this type of phenomena increasing because obviously when push comes to shove, we are engaging the enemy on the ground, defeating them day by day, and we will see more and more of these images of people preferring not to go into combat and surrendering themselves. So of course the magnitude will be increasing, it will be widespread, and of course we will utilize the intelligence, the information we can get from the different, whether they're Hamas operatives or just civilians that have knowledge. And indeed the activities are ongoing, and as we rightly said yesterday, we've seen more and more information coming out of the field, and we are gaining a grasp on what is going on. As you rightly pointed out, Sinwar is being pursued, and this is the nature of the war ahead.
So how's the process work? We just saw these videos handing over the weapons, holding up IDs. What do you do with them after you catch them?
So there's obviously field questioning, operations that are ongoing, processing, and those that are needed for further interrogation go to further interrogation, and those that are not are released.
Now, we've seen some calls from activist groups in the West that are criticizing these large-scale surrenders and arrests. Can you explain to them the necessity of why they're stripped down and how the frequency of them hiding bomb vests and other weapons has been in the past?
So we lived through the second intifada here, where Hamas used suicide bombing as a strategy in inflicting huge, massive deaths on Israelis in coffee shops, in malls, in shopping centers, and so on. So it is a threat, it exists, and therefore we need to act with caution when engaging civilians and suspects on the ground. When we are conducting these activities, we're conducting it within the rules and regulations in order to limit civilian casualties, limit casualties and expand our force protection, but also in order to make sure that weapons are handed over and seized by the IDF. This is the reality on the ground.
Now, the surrender that we're seeing, this is unconditional surrender from these operatives, or have we seen conditions given? Are there negotiations involved?
So I mean, when we're surrounding a location that has a huge amount of operatives, we call them to surrender. That is basically what is happening.
Okay. I want to move on to the discussion we had briefly mentioned, that being Yahya Sinwar, how he fled to the south during the humanitarian corridors in the opening days of the war. Where is the hunt for the terrorist leader currently standing?
So I don't want to relate specifically to Sinwar. Obviously, he is the mastermind of the massacre of the 7th of October. He's the person that equipped, financed, and gave the green light for the brutal attack on Israel on the 7th of October, and therefore he needs to pay a price, personal price. Of course, we have, and as you have seen over the last few days, increased our activities in southern Gaza, specifically around Khan Yunis, at specific locations, but it is all in concert with our war goals of dismantling Hamas as a governing authority and bringing home the hostages. That is our responsibility. That is what we intend on doing.
Can you give us a more clear view of the situation on the ground right now? Where does the battle for Khan Yunis really stand right now, on the ground and also the underground fortresses itself?
So the reality is one where Hamas has, for the last 16 years, built and anticipated a war with Israel and built its capabilities around what he suspects are the things that would challenge us. So we are conducting house-to-house, alley-to-alley, tunnel-to-tunnel combat. We are engaging the enemy extensively, surrounding specific locations that I would identify and clarify or characterize as centers of gravity of Hamas and their capabilities to operate. So whether it's command control positions, it's staging grounds for their terrorist activities, it's definitely the tunnel system that they're operating in, from, and within. All of these are targets from the IDF. As you pointed out, in the last 24 hours, 250 targets or so have been struck, and that's just in this day. And we continue to reveal the tunnel system every day that goes by. We're revealing more and destroying more.
And I want to talk about the hostages now. What sort of information is known by the military on that can be shared? And is there a significant fear amongst the military leadership that the operations in Khan Yunis might put them at risk?
Hostages are a top priority for the IDF and a national top priority, obviously. We are very concerned and rightly, we've demanded that the International Committee of the Red Cross have access to the hostages to assess their well-being. From our perspective, and I want to be very cautious about what I say, we are utilizing our intelligence and operational capabilities in order to create the operational option to act in order to bring hostages home, and that is what we will do. That we will stop it, and there will be no bars regarding to those activities.
I want to now address some of the accusations we've seen coming out of the United Nations and other international agencies, where we see them criticizing the policy of trying to move civilians to small areas to keep them out of harm's way, and they're talking about the conditions of these civilians in these areas. What is the IDF's response to these accusations? How do you respond to international bodies attempting to pressure the military?
So we have to operate, and we take pride in how we operate at distinguishing between civilians and terrorists, non-combatants and Hamas. Our whole effort since day one of this war has been to try and get people, civilians, out of harm's way. This is a fundamental, I would say, value that we uphold, in combination with the second value of military necessity. So we are calling people to evacuate from a specific location. It's because we intend to operate there. And for their health, for their safety, it is best for them to temporarily move. Our war is against Hamas, not against the people of Gaza. And as such, we are operating in order to alleviate the situation on one hand, but achieve our goals on the other. So people need to listen to our instructions when we are telling them to move out of a specific area, so that we can conduct our operations. It's important to understand there isn't one building that we haven't found a tunnel access point, weapons storage capabilities, communications capabilities. This is how Hamas has chosen the battleground. This is precisely where they're operating from. This is where they instruct the rockets that are launched as we were just coming on into the south. So this is basically the reality that we have to operate. Telling us not to operate would be the equivalent of saying to Hamas, come into Israel again and butcher our families and babies. This is unacceptable. We won't accept it. Israel won't accept it. The IDF has been instructed to dismantle and destroy Hamas's operational capabilities, its governing capabilities, its terrorist capabilities, and we will do so.
Do you have a way to estimate how long that might take, the high-intensity phase of the operations? Do we really know, well, how much longer that's going to go on for?
I mean, that's a question that I think everybody's wondering. The reality is Hamas have been preparing for this, as I said, for 16 years now. There's no quick fix. From our perspective, the government has not given us a due date. There is no time we need to be done by. There is only the goal that needs to be achieved, and we intend on achieving it.
Well, Lieutenant Colonel, thank you very much for breaking down the situation on the ground and helping our audience, as well as the international audience, understand, well, just why there are so many challenges in this operation.